This is why your cruising dreams will fail. A bit controversial, perhaps?
Very controversial. We've got sort of 5 main areas that you should be aware of if you are looking to pursue this lifestyle, which we positively encourage you to do. But we have a few anecdotes to just be a bit aware of.
Yeah, in fact, we've got more than 5. Yes, I'll keep those secrets. Yeah, so cruising dreams are wonderful, but you do have to add a little bit of reality into those dreams, and we're going to bring you right back down to reality in this podcast. But I think you wanted to say something first.
Oh, yes. A quick bit of very important, exciting news. This whole week, you may have seen that followtheboat.com has been offline, and that is because we have completely revamped it. We've built it from the bottom up just to make it much faster to load, much easier to navigate. And we do encourage you to go and visit followtheboat.com. Don't forget, you can sign up as well to our email updates so you get notifications when we post something new. But we'd love to know your feedback on what you think of the new design. We're really excited about it.
Yes, and you'll find all our podcasts together in one place. Immediately on the homepage, you can go straight to podcasts. So if you like this one and you want to see others, have a scroll through, see what we've got. Okay, so back to the reasons why your dreams will fail. Hello, I'm Liz.
And I'm Jamie.
Welcome to Follow the Boat, in which we discuss what it's really like to give it all up to live on a boat.
And go travelling around the world. We've been doing it since 2006 and we're still at it.
Each week we talk about our latest YouTube video.
And about boats, sailing, travel or anything else which floats into our heads.
And if you leave a comment we like, we'll give you an answer and a name check. Peace and fair winds. The first of our reasons I've called sailing knowledge/experience. Now, this might seem very obvious to most people. Of course, you're going to go live on a boat, you're going to have some sailing knowledge and experience. But over the years, we've discovered people who've got onto boats with none. They really don't know what they're doing, or at least one of them has no idea what's going to go on. So, yes, you want to have a dream. Yes, you want to go around the world. Yes, you want to get away from it all, give up the rat race, blah, blah, blah. Do you really want to be on a boat? That's my question.
Yeah, it happens so frequently. We see it all the time, to be honest. A couple go out, buy a boat. It's maybe his dream or maybe her dream, but they don't know what they let themselves in for. And so the first few weeks are all great until something goes wrong. And that's when you start to discover how you cope with these situations. And of course, on a boat, everything is sort of magnified. It's more compressed. It's more claustrophobic. So when things go wrong, it's not like you can just turn your back on it and nip down the pub and have a pint to sort of, have a breathing space. You may find yourself backed into a corner. So those kind of situations you may never have been in before. And it can come as a little bit of a shock.
Yeah, so this is what I'm talking about, sailing experience. If you don't have any before you get onto the boat, it will be a big shock. You need to understand what it's like to live on a boat. So if you're going to do this, please spend at least a week doing a flotilla or learning to sail, doing the basic training on a boat. Do it together if you're a couple, on your own if you're a single, or do it with the whole family, and just see if you like the idea of being on a boat. The other thing, of course, I've said is knowledge. You need to be in bad situations to really understand how bad they are. And I've got one here. I've got an example from Salty Lass. They say, we watched an acquaintance we knew motor into position into the anchorage where we were. He tossed the anchor and some chain off the front, gave us a wave and retreated below. That night, the wind shifted and became a force 6 and the anchorage became untenable. We re-anchored. He ended up on the rocks and the local harbour master and the RNLI pulled him off. He got his boat fixed through his insurance, sailed it home and sold it. These days, he's on inland waterways and rivers in a small motor cruiser. So there was someone who had this lovely dream, one night of dragging an anchor in bad wind, and he had enough of it. So you don't want to be in that position when you start your sailing dream.
Yes, that also highlights the point about, we're saying getting sailing experience. Now, we've said this many times, the sailing bit is the easy bit. Mm-hmm. Getting the sails out and working out which way to angle them in accordance to the direction of the wind. anyone can pick that up within a day. That's the easy bit. What we're talking about here are those kind of situations that Salty Lass highlighted, where you have enough knowledge to know that because there was a wind shift and the anchorage is potentially dangerous, that you have the foresight to pick up the anchor and move around somewhere safer.
Which is exactly what they did. In fact, it got to a force 10, she said. So, don't want to put you off, but be realistic about your sailing skills before you go and live on a boat. Otherwise, you could end up as a marina queen, never move out of the marina. So that's number one. But kind of going on for that is being a couple, as you said, when you're a couple on a boat, there are other things you need to think about, aren't there?
What, you mean like forgetting my birthday and not getting me a present for my birthday?
Quite often what we've seen over the years, that one person is driven by this dream. They want to live on a boat. They want to get away from it all, possibly even sail around the world. They want an adventure. And that person drags everyone else with them. It may be a wife, it may be a husband, it may be a whole family. And they set off with this wild, fabulous idea. They've got the experience and the knowledge, but what they don't have is crew who are equally invested.
I was just thinking as you said that, some of the most successful couples who are sailing where it's one person's dream is they actually end up becoming solo sailors where the wife actually stays home. And the examples I'm thinking of, it's the wife, but we have met female solo sailors whose husband has stayed ashore. Those are actually quite successful relationships because very early on they've established, right, this is your dream. I don't want to get involved in this. I'll come out to visit when you're in a calm anchorage, but I'm not prepared to do the crossing. So I'll stay at home and fly out and see you at your next location. Those are successful relationships where they have worked things out.
Yeah.
What happens, though, quite often is that a couple move on board, as you say, and it's only one of them that has the dream and the other one is forced into this situation. And when something horrible happens, which it will. It's not a matter of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens. And that person that doesn't want to go sailing is not prepared for it.
No, they need to be equally knowledgeable about sailing. So they need to do a few courses and understand the ropes of sailing. They really do need to, and they need to want to. Generally speaking, in our only experience, it's the woman who's being dragged by the husband, often quite happily being dragged along, but not with her eyes open. And I've spoken to women confidentially who have ended up on a sailing boat with their husband, and all they do is the washing, the cooking, the cleaning, the tidying, the putting away, all the stuff that they perhaps have been doing at home, but now in a very cramped, uncomfortable space that they're not happy about. It can be really difficult. So if you're a couple, please be honest with each other about what you can and you can't live with.
Well, I mean, being in a successful relationship is all about compromise anyway, whether you live on land or on a boat. But even more so perhaps on a boat, you are having to compromise your space and your comfort and your luxuries that you're used to at home. So with those compromises, on top of that, as you say, you have the compromises of working out who does what, who's responsible for what. And as you say, so many times we see it's normally the wife that ends up doing all those chores. I mean, that's not much fun. And we had a big discussion about this with a couple where we were saying, well, the husband, sometimes he's responsible for the engine. And she said, yes, but that only happens once a week, once a month. I'm having to do the cooking every single day. So you do have to think about division of labour and responsibility. Now, it could be that you're quite happy doing all the washing up and the cooking. If that works for you, that works for you. But you do have to be realistic about it and understand, of course, that you may start off with her or him doing all the chores. But after 6 months of resentment and terrible situations with horrible anchorages and terrible crossings, you may find you get to the anchorage and one of you turns around and says, right, that's it, I've had enough, because you didn't talk about it.
You do need both of you to find some joy in what you're doing. There's got to be something there that is joyful and makes you want to do it. And of course, it's not just couples. We do know families that haven't worked out well on a boat. It's often the parents want to do it and they drag the children along. And children can resent leaving all their friends behind if they're a bit older. When they're on the boat, you've got to spend a lot of time entertaining them, schooling them, obviously, as well, and being total parents to those children while you're on a boat. So much more so than you do on land when they can go off to school. You're with them 24/7. So there's issues of safety and all these kinds of things, which YouTube channels don't really show you. You see these children having a wonderful time, jumping off the boat, having a great fun, but we know from a fact from other families that we've met that it's very hard work.
Sorry for interrupting, but while I've got you here, if you like what we do and you want to support us and become a Patreon, or join us on FTP Mates, or even drop a quid in the rum fund, go to followtheboat.com/pub. Of course, come to the pub.
Reason number 3, money. Oh, the root of all evil. Yeah, money. So you need to be able to fund the whole thing. You need to be able to fund your dream. You need to be able to comfortably fund it, because, as we all know, boats are really expensive, and they really are expensive. You think you've got it covered, you think you've worked everything out, and then something bites you in the bum.
Yeah, it's one thing buying the boat, having the money to buy the boat. It's those ongoing expenses that become costly. And even if you sort of work out a monthly budget, you have to remember that sometimes you'll have a big expense which you didn't foresee. So you need to make sure that you have enough money to cover those. Just as a quick example, I've had to order some new hydraulic hoses for our water maker. We tried 3 times to get them made up in Indonesia, once in Mataram, twice in Jakarta. We just couldn't get them made up. So I eventually went back to our distributor in the UK. 2 hoses a foot long, over 200 quid.
No, you didn't tell me that. You told me that on screen.
Yeah.
Well, we need them because the water maker is so important, and a brand new water maker is like £10,000.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, is that 200 quid. Well, that might not sound like much, but when you're getting these costs that keep popping up every now and then, it does start to eat into your savings or your monthly income. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, the biggest one we've had is a new engine, and you may not be planning on getting a new engine, but you may have to. So think about that. The thing I really want to talk about is that you need a safe, regular income. A lot of cruisers are older, so they've got savings, or they've got pensions, or they've got income that is regular, or they've got property that they're renting. This is regular income for most people. A lot of people get the idea that they can start a YouTube channel maybe and live off that. We're here to tell you that unless you're La Vagabond or Delos, that's not going to happen.
No.
It's saturated. The market is now saturated. When we started, we were the very first, I believe. I've been told we were the first. But there was only Delos and Vagabond, and there was a couple of others. And now there's millions all over the world. And it's not a big market anyway, and it's saturated. So forget relying on that. The good thing these days is that people do work remotely. So it is great for younger people now. They're starting to work remotely from their boats. So money, root of all evil, and very important on a boat. Unless you've got that income, don't even think about it, because you'll very soon lose everything. Number 4, risk averse. When I say that, what I mean is if you're the sort of person who really weighs up the risks and doesn't take them ever, then sailing is probably not for you. Sailing is for adrenaline junkies, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, most of the time it's gentle cruising down the coast, but whether you choose to or not, you will end up in extreme weather situations at some point, and you have to be prepared to embrace those situations and just get on with it. There is no hiding away from it. So depends what you're like. Are you a fight or flight person? If you're the sort of person that likes to leave a problem until tomorrow and deal with it when you're kind of in the right mood, then you might find sailing could be a little bit difficult for you, because sometimes you just have to get on with things.
Definitely, when the proverbial hits the fan, that's when your muscle memory runs into play, and that's where all that knowledge we talked about earlier becomes apparent, because you know what to do. You know everything works on your boat. You know what your roles are, the two of you, or four, however many they are, and you just click in to deal with the situation. The boat's heeling too far. There's a lot of wind coming in. Something's jammed. You need to know what to do. And also you have to trust the other one, which is also why I said earlier that it's really important that both partners understand how to sail that boat.
There's a few other risks I'm thinking of. Piracy in particular. Yeah. So there have been two major areas where we've sailed where there has been piracy. And so we had to make a judgment call on whether we could go through these places, and we ended up doing it, but not without risk, of course. Most people at the time would have chosen not to have done these passages because they felt it was too risky. It's just an example of where we weighed it up and decided, okay, well, we'll handle some of that risk.
Yeah, because one of them was Somalia in 2010, and going through the Red Sea then was dangerous. But now it's all reared its head again. What's going on over there at the moment, it's the same. The same again.
Well, you've now got the Houthis and the Somalis. The Somali piracy has started again because, and let's not forget, we're just sidetracking here. The reason why Somalia piracy started was because international fishing boats were fishing in the Somali waters within the 12 miles offshore perimeter. And as a response to that, they started getting annoyed that they weren't respecting their own fishing waters. And that's why it started. And of course, as we know, it then progressed into something far more serious.
Yeah.
Well, roll on a decade or so, and here we are now with the problems in Yemen and the Houthi rebels, who traditionally actually have just been targeting commercial ships. So we do know of sailboats that have continued to go up and down the Red Sea. But literally in the last 6 months, Somali piracy has started all over again.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, I think right now I would not risk doing that passage.
We did it and it was scary. It was very scary, and I don't want to go through that again, and I wouldn't go back. There are boats that are going, I've read about, quite often they'll take a military person with them or someone with the experience of that sort of thing. But Joe Bloggs, the sailor, us, no way. Wouldn't do it again. Not now. There was a time when you could, but not now. So there you go, risk averse. What risks are you prepared to take? And there will be dangerous situations on your boat, and you do need to know what you're doing, and you do need to be prepared to take those risks, and you do need to enjoy the adrenaline of dealing with the exciting moments.
Yes, but now all that risk assessment and taking risks brings us on to point 5, which of course is being scared of the unknown.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about the unknown of sailing situations here. We're talking pretty much about going to foreign lands.
Yeah. And No, I was going to say, it's just come about because we've been in Southeast Asia for nigh on 10 years now. And when we were in Thailand, everybody thought it was great. But we've got further afield, and we spent a long time now in Indonesia. And a lot of the comments we get are from people who worry about us in Indonesia, thinking it's a dangerous place. It's not. It's our favourite place.
It is. Of all the Southeast Asian countries, definitely our favourite. Indonesia is the most populous Muslim country. And I only found out only the other day that Jakarta is set to become the biggest city in the world, overtaking Tokyo by 2030. So anyway, it's a very vibrant place, and it's very energetic, and I mean that in a positive way. But culturally, it is quite different to what we're certainly used to in the West.
Yes, and when you read the news and social media and listen and watch the news, you would imagine that any Muslim country is full of people who want to kill you and terrorists, and it's an awful place. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I really couldn't.
I mean, I have heard people say, oh, well, I wouldn't go to these countries because of their human rights issues, the way they treat women and so on. And the only thing I say to that is look at your own country before you start judging the behaviour of other countries. And by that, I just mean collectively, it is silly, I think, to generalise a country and its people based on the actions of, say, the government.
Yeah.
Because we say this all the time. It's when it comes to the people that you meet, most people are just like you. You'd be surprised at how familiar most people are around the world. When you get away from the politics and what's going on in terms of laws being passed. But the everyday people on the whole are just wonderful. And Indonesia is quite special in that respect. But it's the same with pretty much every country we've been to.
Definitely, absolutely not been upset by any country. So what we're saying is, don't be scared. Confront all these preconceived ideas you may have about any country. Chuck them away and go to that country and find out for yourself. And I'd say that we have never been to a country where anything is particularly frightening.
No.
We even went to Yemen and loved it.
No. I'm more frightened walking around streets in the UK
Yes, I would agree.
than I am around here. And I've heard that said by many Western immigrants in Asia. Yeah. So many people say how they feel so much more comfortable walking around the streets of, a Muslim city versus their own town back home in the UK.
People often ask about theft, don't they? We find it a funny question, theft on our boat, because it's not something we ever consider. It's so unlikely here that anything would ever be stolen from your boat. They're curious, the local people, they want to come and chat. They don't want to nick stuff. Very, very unusual for anything to be stolen.
So I think a lot of this has to do with being open-minded and not to carry your preconceived ideas. We do as human, it's human nature to want to generalise and to put people into little categories. And we do it ourselves, but we have to keep reminding ourselves, no, the world doesn't really work like that. So, there's nothing worse than meeting a cruiser who's been around the world and still describes, these countries as third world. And, I just get uncomfortable when I meet people like that. You've got to be open-minded.
Yeah. Yes, it's very interesting how these so-called third world countries view the West. It's only when you get here and you hear them talking to you about the West, they think we're a bit of a joke. They think that we're rather arrogant and think we're better than them, and they just see us as a bit of a joke. So it's a bit of a wake-up call because they're very good here at lots of things.
Yep.
Right, we go on from that one to the next one, which is, if you are a perfectionist, you will find it very difficult to live on a boat.
What's your point here?
Well...
about you. So I've just seen your notes and you are justifying why our boat is a complete tip.
Yes. Most boats, most of the time, are a tip. When we're sailing, we're not. Everything's put away and everything's in its place, pretty much 99% of it. But often when you get to anchor, you start tinkering, you start doing things around the boat, you start cleaning, washing, doing blah, 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 lots and lots of stuff, which involves opening all your lockers and bringing stuff out. And for any perfectionist types, it will drive you up the wall because there's always stuff around.
I remember when we very first started meeting a yachty, another liveaboard, who said that they liked to be 1 hour away from a sail. And actually, up until recently, when we've got very comfortable here, I would say we're half an hour away from a sail.
Yeah.
By that, what I mean is, if suddenly you have to weigh anchor and go out to sea, obviously everything on the boat has to be stowed. So this does mean that when you settle down at anchor and you start pulling stuff out, just be mindful of the fact that you may have to shovel this stuff away in an emergency to get out of a situation. So I would call it organised mess.
Organised mess. And certainly when we're doing trips, when we're going from A to B and we're doing lots of stops along the way, our boat's ready all the time. It's not a mess. But my other point about being a perfectionist is that your boat's never perfect. It's always and continues to be a work in progress.
If you find this topic interesting and would like to continue the conversation, come and join the Follow the Boat Discord community. Look for the link in the description. It's free.
Finally, you cannot be DIY shy. You will have heard loads of times that people say that cruising is boat repairs and maintenance in beautiful places. This is not a joke. It's true, isn't it?
You'd be surprised. For anyone who has never owned something like a boat, don't underestimate how much of your time is spent fixing little things. And even for myself, who, well, I wouldn't call myself DIY shy, but I don't relish the idea of tinkering on an engine. But just to stay on top of things takes up so much time. It really does. So you do have to embrace it. You've got to not necessarily enjoy it, but not have an issue with the fact that you've got to, I don't know, strip the water maker, for example, occasionally. You just have to get on with it.
You've got to incorporate it into your way of life on a boat, maintenance. The more maintenance you do, the less repairs you'll do as well. So it's a really important thing. And I do want to say, it doesn't matter how big or small your boat is, or how old or new your boat is, brand new boats go wrong. In fact, they go wrong quite a lot, because they've got lots of little niggles and things that need sorting out from the beginning. We've heard some horrendous stories from people we know. And I think if you've been watching any YouTube channels, you'll have seen a number of boats have had problems with their brand new boats. So DIY is a big part.
It is. And there's a lot of creative people out there, I suppose like myself. I'm much more comfortable behind a camera than I am in front of an engine. But you do have to go on with it. I have to say, and I hope you'll agree with me, I no longer swear and scream and shout when I'm tackling jobs.
You've got better. You've definitely got better. Same 20 years.
Yeah. And I suppose there's two levels of DIY. There's the fixing problems when something breaks down and you in an emergency, you've got to fix it. But as we said, there is also that staying on top of things. You'd be surprised how, when you don't use something for a while, how it stops working. And there is this phrase, use it or lose it. And that is so applicable on a boat. From something like your toilet, which has got lots of washers and O-rings and things in it. If you don't use it, it will dry up over time and you'll end up having to strip that down. To things like the anchor windlass, for example, our relay switch, which we hadn't used for a couple of months because we were this was last year, sitting in torrential rain for 2 months, and it got damp. And eventually we had to completely replace that because we couldn't fix it. So all these things, it's, as you say, the more often you use it, service them, maintain them, the less likely they are to come and bite you on the bum at an unexpected moment.
If you're not prepared to do it yourself, there's usually someone else who will come and do it for you. We use local people quite a lot over here because the price is okay for us. It's not going to break the bank. It gives local people a job, which we're all in favour of. So in some instances, we will call for local help. But if you've got a lot of money, then you have to ship it in from abroad, or you have to pay through the nose, and it will really eat into your expenses. So I don't think there's any way round having to do a bit of maintenance and DIY yourself.
I think that's a very good point. The more that you can do yourself, the more you're going to save, both in terms of time and money. There have been occasions where we've fixed problems ourselves, which had you had got someone in, a specialist, it would have cost you, hundreds. So that's beer money you've just saved yourself.
And you used to be, your first response normally is, we need a new one.
Yeah,
I remember trying to squash that out of you.
Yeah, I think it's a trap that new cruisers fall into. And especially, when you start cruising, you've probably got more budget when you first start cruising than you have 10 years down the line. And that is another reason it's almost out of necessity that sometimes you don't need to buy a new one. If you just spend a bit of time servicing the old one and maintaining it, you'll get many more years of use out of it, whatever that may be. And that applies to pretty much anything on the boat.
Well, I'm thinking of the water maker. So we've had the water maker, I think it's 2008 or 7, we got that water maker and we've still got it. It's still the same water maker. Now, you've stripped that. You can strip that blind now. You service it regularly. We use it all the time. So these are all the things you've been saying. But occasionally things will have to be replaced. And it wasn't working, it was leaking. Now, had that been very early on, we may have thought we needed a new one. It just was broken. But you went through it with all your knowledge gained over the years, and you've worked out what it is. We need these new hoses and the attachments that go with them. And so we've ordered those in. And without having done all that maintenance and repair work over the years, you would never have known that.
And I mentioned it earlier, but we did try and get them sourced locally, which of course costs 1/10 of the price. I mean, hydraulic hoses you can get made up anywhere. Sadly, they we just could not. 3 times we could not get them to work. So we tried to save money by getting them done made up locally.
Yeah.
But that was an extreme example. But that only came about because I had stripped it down. And the only reason why I stripped it down is because I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Did you know that liking and subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts helps us to get noticed? Go on, give us a helping hand.
I think we'll stop it there. We don't want to put people off too much.
No, I think that's a really important point to make, because we were criticised this when we did our 5 reasons not to buy a boat 10 years ago. And people were saying, yeah, but how come you're recording this from your boat? We positively encourage anyone watching this to give living on a boat a try. But we just want you to be aware that there can be some hiccups.
Yes, this is more of a reality check for those dreamers out there that haven't got their feet a little bit more on the ground. Sometimes YouTube channels can give you the wrong impression and imagine it's one long party. It's not, it's hard work along with the parties. What would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was a period when every single YouTube channel was bikinis, barbecues and beaches, and they were painting a very false picture. And of course, that's the dream that you buy into. But I do think that a lot of YouTube channels, not that I particularly watch them, but a lot of them do also cover the bad times as well. And it is worth bearing these in mind. So a good YouTube channel should be breaking down all of the bad things that happen, just to paint a very real picture of what this lifestyle is like.
Anyway, I hope you do it. If you're thinking of do it. Put comments below. Got any questions, ask away. We try to answer every single comment. And if you've got any stories of people you know who've tried to do it, or if you yourself have tried to do it and had to give it up, let us know. We'd like to know why.
Yes, we'd also like your comments on our new website. Go and check out followtheboat.com. And when you click into a blog post, look for the little sign up page for email updates. Please do sign up so you get notified when we publish a new post. You should find it very, very smooth and easy to use. Right, another boat coming. We've had to stop about 20 times during this podcast. There's so many boats coming and going today, I think, because the weather's lovely and everyone's out doing little trips. So I think it's time to wind up and to wish you peace and fair winds.